It is amazing that black relationships have lasted for 400 years. They lasted this morning. They're also going to last tonight, and you may not even know the person to whom you will have the relationship with. But they do tend to go over. Relationships do go over like that. And as we move into what has happened to this, I know that our relationships sometimes really reach a low ebb. That's one of the reasons why we wrote the book, How to Find and Keep a BMW, a Black Man Working. In there. It's just very serious. Because our relationships didn't start yesterday or last week. It also started 400 years ago where those 19 persons were here. And I want you to remember something very important that one of our by any means necessary power brokers told us, and that was Malcolm X. He said, if we can only remember that you didn't land at Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on you. And it's very essential that we kind of keep this in place. And knowing that these are the things that happen, then we have to move more to change it. See, we have a system that would not like to see black males and black females together. They would not like to see that happening at all. Because once we come together, they understand the power of the strength of the black woman, the queen of the universe. They know that, her strength. They also know the power of the black male, the warrior. If you would turn him loose, he will protect also his family and things that need to be done. And because they understand that if our relationships are together, then they will lose. But if our relationships are torn up, then we can forever be treated in certain ways by the oppressors. That's why they gave us something called immigration, which is nothing but the illusion of inclusion. They gave us this. They gave that statement. And when they gave that statement, it meant that they could go right into your homes. They went into the black homes now, the powers that be, and told us that you cannot discipline your children anymore. And if you discipline your children, you were going to jail. It's this kind of thing they told us. Now this is amazing that, you know, the black parents who in Africa, that was out of the question. Some social worker coming there saying you can't discipline your children, the social worker would disappear. As you all know, this kind of thing would go on. You would be sitting in a place like this, and all you had to do was act up and do something wrong, and all your mother had to do was to glance in your direction. Y'all remember that? And you remember that the glance meant, don't let me have to get up and come over there. And every once in a while in the black family, there was a fool who would challenge the glance. And if you could get home over the foot, over the ironing card, over whatever, you were sent to the backyard to get something off the peach tree. And if you brought something in that was too short, God forbid that you would do something like that. But then it got so terrible, it frightening us. This is why we got to take this back. And this is the best part of our action plan, is to reclaim the minds of our children. Because then they went into the public schools and took discipline out of there. So when we acted up in there, they put our boys, our black men, into something called special ed classes. And as you know, those special ed classes are nothing but holding cells until they can go to the state prison. They knew that if we can put them in prison, if we can have them convicted for a felony, then once they get out of prison, they cannot get a job because of that. They cannot get the job. And then if they happen to eke out and find a job, then they have to pay taxes on a job, yet they cannot vote, and I call that taxation without representation. That's what we're looking at. And if one of the things that we would learn to do, they did a grand thing when they took that discipline away from us, because when they made our parents afraid to discipline the children, then what happened? We found out that the teachers teachers were afraid of the principals were scared of the superintendents, superintendent was scared of the school board was scared of the parents were scared of the children, and the children ain't scared of nobody. The reason why we're so pleased to have the covenant, it makes all of this type foolishness stop. It's going on under Angela Glover in San Francisco. It's all over the country. They're all saying, we finally have a movement where we can take back over the minds of our children. And the first thing we got to take over, the covenant taught us that we do not have to have black leaders anymore. It told us because everyone in this room is empowered to be a black leader.
There is an African proverb that says,
our feet, and welcome Sister Dr. Julia Hare. All tap.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, thank you so much for that. You know, it is only in New York. See, if the other places around the country are just there. You know, they often said that California and New York are there. You know, the rest of the country just holds the two places together. But let me tell you, the energy really comes out of here, and the blackness comes out of here, because when brothers and sisters move out to California, as you well know, something happens to them. When they go to Berkeley, which we call Berkeley, you also understand they become multicultural and people of color, and they can become everything but blackness. Then when they come to San Francisco, that's the city of whatever your sexual preference might be. And then when they're down in Los Angeles, they get false notions, you know, that they're all in Hollywood or whatever it might be, and they tend to forget that the togetherness and the blackness. Because had any group of people hassled a group of black people in California the way they did you when you and the slave, and then you got up, you didn't even fall on your backs, but you got up, went to another location, and here you are today. Most groups would not have survived. They would not have been able to handle that. And the reason why you're here tonight is because you have survived, and that means that you're threatening somebody and doing something right. Have you noticed that the groups who were after you and the slave, and after all of us all over this world, but especially after you and the slave, you notice they're not after Third Baptist Church on Sundays. They're not after Abyssinia. They're not after any of those churches. See, they're not after places that are not threats to them. But when they believe that black people get together who are determined to understand that they're not going to be controlled by their inferiors, then they're ready to deal with us. And this is the type of problem that we have going on. That's why I'm so happy to see what is going on here. And I know that this is our Women's History Month, but as I told you before when I was here, and even on WLIB this week, I'm just an advocate for brothers and sisters, because I do believe that whatever sisters are, brothers got to be that with us. Whatever brothers are, they have to be it with us. And that way we raise strong warriors, young males and females, to take our places and to continue the legacy that we have. And so we're going to get into why we're doing that. I'm also very, very pleased. You know, you don't read in the paper sometimes about what Brother Alton Maddox is doing in the slave theater, because the major paper that comes to our coast, to San Francisco from here, I think you all call it the New York Times, but out there we call it the Daily Hebrew. And so that is a paper. That is the only one that comes out there. And every morning when we read the Hebrew, it doesn't be telling us that people like Brother Maddox has gone to court and cross-examined himself, and, you know, done all this stuff. These things don't come out there. They really don't come out there. They don't tell us about what the slave theater has done and how it has moved from place to place and how it still remains black. You may be the only organization in this country that has been able, since the 60s, to remain black. You may be the only. You may be the only. And you know, that is a sad
commentary on our piece, on our people, that anybody else can remain whatever they want to be. You know, the Irish can have what they have, the Italians got St. Patrick's Day, the Jews have theirs, you know, you just go down the line. But whenever black folk get together, somehow they just going to become afraid that we are there to do what they would do if they were in our place, and that is that if they had been oppressed, as long as they have oppressed us, they would be naturally afraid to meet, because we would wonder what are they going to do. So they really believe that we are vindictive, evil people and would give them exactly what they deserve, and perhaps one day we will. Perhaps one day we will come to that point. I hope that this is the thing. And I'm certainly happy to tell you that our leader here, Brother Maddox, who's not with us tonight, remains one of the most perceptive. I think he remains one of the most articulate and one of the outspoken critics of racism in this country. Because let me tell you, the brother's voice has not been silenced because some corporations ask him to come and settle disputes, and he ends up with more than the black employees. And do I need to call any names? You all know how this kind of thing happens. Brother's voice has not been silenced because not only did they give him a steak, they're now buying him out with hamburgers and french fries, whatever it takes to do that. Brother's voice is now being heard on our coast and also in Africa, which I think is very, very important. And one of the reasons why I'm always happy to come to this organization, because you're the only black organization, again, that understands to put race first. Race first. Race first. And I've had some white folks to tell me that I was a flaming militant, a radical, or whatever all of these names were that they called me. And I said that I am very pleased that you called me a nationalist, because you could have said that I was a member of the NAACP of the Urban League. So I said I'm very pleased of the names that you have given. But I said that because we put race first, something is wrong with us. But everybody else puts their own first, because God bless the child who has his own. And so I think that race first is very important. And though we meet in a different venue, we're not at the Slave Theater, we're not at the church, we're now at the Masonic Temple, it really does not matter where we are physically. It matters where we are in our minds. And wherever we meet, as long as we know that we're Africans, and as long as we know that we're black people living here in America, we know exactly who we are. You notice you can put an Uncle Tom in any venue in the White House, you can even put him in his, it'll still be a Tom. You can put him anywhere you want. Well, it's the same thing with us as strong people. Wherever we are, we're going to be the people that we need to be. And I know that this is our Women's History Month, and that's why I'm certainly happy to see sisters. And this is the only place you can come in this country where you don't find a room full of sisters who are still sitting here waiting to exhale. Can you imagine something like that? Be sitting here waiting to exhale. Because we know we have exhaled ever since we came through the middle passage of the Holocaust of our enslavement, and I'm glad to see that. This is the only place you can come where you'll see that these sisters are true mothers of the universe. See, a lot of folks wonder who are the mothers and who gave life to every living creature, but we know we are the mothers. I realize we don't always like to claim our children, because who always wants to claim Whoopi Goldberg and Dennis Rodman? But we do know that as the mothers of the universe, sometimes we have to do that. I'm happy to come before the sisters of Isis, and the sisters of Nefertiti, and the sisters of Nzinga, and the sisters of Harriet Tubman. And the reason why I say Harriet Tubman, the way you've had to move from one location to another, it reminds me of Harriet Tubman. When Sister led that Underground Railroad, some of us, when she got about 3, 4, 5, 100 of us out, do you know some of those Negroes wanted to turn around and run back into slavery because they were so happy and so pleased with the master taking care of them? Sister put her hand on the hip and said, I'll shoot you myself before I let you turn around and run back into something like this. She made that very, very clear to them exactly what she would do to them. You also came from Sister Ida B. Wells, who drew the attention to this world, not just to this country, of the unnecessary lynchings of black men in the 19th century. That white men were doing things they should have been lynched 5 times over for, but instead they wanted to lynch the brother. She's the one who brought the attention. Then there's our Sada Shakur, and not to mention our own dear Queen Mother Moore, that I hope that we always remember, our sisters of her. And so to the women in this room, that I know that you have worked hard, I know you have persevered, I know you have to put up with a lot of stuff. Because I know when a lot of women sit on television talking about there's a glass ceiling, they don't know if their faces were black, the ceiling would be mahogany, and you cannot move a mahogany ceiling. But to those of you who have survived and persevered and stood by our people, stood by our men, stood by our families, and stood by our communities, and most importantly our race, let's give ourselves a round of applause. Let us do that. Let us do that. And to our brothers that are in this room, and I mean genuine brothers, and I probably, before I get to these brothers, and probably should have said that before the sisters, I'm welcoming sisters and brothers here, but I also want to welcome the infiltrators that may be in our midst tonight, because you know that they're here. You know that they're here. And the only thing that I ask when you report to your master, please spell my name correctly. It's Juliahare. This is it. And to those who are not sure that they're going to have race first or that they're black first, tonight let us make you honorary Negroes, whichever it is that you choose to be. But as black men, the reason why I'm so happy to see you, I'm happy to see the first men who also walked this earth, and the first to truly establish a civilization. They now want to say what the Greeks did it, and well, we all know all the names they've given, but you were absolutely the first, of course, without help. You were the first to build institutions, because as Marcus Garvey told us, that it is our business to continue to build institutions, and by doing that, you still have people, white scientists, wondering how you built one of the only 7 wonders of the world. The pyramids are still standing. This got them stymied and wondered how did it get up there. And you can believe that every day as we speak, they're still trying to find out how that happened. I'm happy to come before brothers who help to build governments in this country, and this is what we're looking at. And because you've done so well, you will also always be genetically represented in the black child when you have stood for something. And I also know that it is not easy being the brother of David Walker, who absolutely gave us our first mission statement in the 19th century. I know it is not easy being a black man, because everybody wants a piece of the black man in this world. Everybody wants a piece of the black male. White man wants a piece of him, and you know his woman wants a piece of the black man. So you know it just goes all over. So I know it is not easy being one, because we know that as a black male, you pose a threat in the bedroom and the boardroom to the white man. Wish you would stop posing it in his bedroom, but anyway, you do pose a threat both ways, and he understands that very, very carefully. And so to all the brothers in this room who have also stood for something, who have also fought, to all the brothers in here who are not insane, because it must be difficult to be a black man walking down the street where everybody's scared of you, but you haven't become totally schizophrenic. So to all of those who have remained true to the cause and the legacy of blackness, let's give these brothers a round of applause. Let us do this. Let us do this. Thank you for this. And our common goal tonight is to see sisters during this month that we're calling Women's History Month. Although we know Black History Month is very important to us, we took this month, and I hope that eventually we're going to call for a Black Males Month and a Black Women's Month, and if we're careful enough, we'll spread that out from September to June till we get all the months in the year, and let white folks have to wonder what months are left. So this is what we're going to do. I know that our common goal tonight, I hope, is that we will understand that we must move ourselves as black women and our race into the 21st century. And the reason why I say move into the 21st century, do you know there are 3 more years before we have to do this? And people just keep going right along. Now, we in this room are going right along, putting up a struggle, but you know, most of our people are content to live with a veil of ignorance over their faces, even those that know better. And so we won't go into the bourgeois right now. We're going to call their names a little bit later. But as it stands now, we know that the struggle it is for you to help us to move into the 21st century. And I know many of you have been doing that every day. You've been reaching out in the community, you've been politicizing, you've been teaching, you've been going to public schools, you're working wherever you can. But sometimes you don't always get the credit that you deserve. So why don't you take a moment to turn to the person who is seated to your right. And it doesn't matter whether you know them, because if you're black, you know them anyway, because you've had the same experiences. So turn to the person seated to your right, men and women. It may even be your significant other by the time the night's over. So turn to the person who is seated to your right and tell them exactly what you have been doing to bring us into the 21st century. Who you've taught, the people that you've reached out to, folks you've done things for, people that you've given money to, and I didn't say to Bloomingdale's and to department stores, but people that you've actually helped. Now, if I don't see you taking 30 seconds to tell it to somebody, I'm going to know you've done nothing. So would you take about 30 seconds, and if you haven't done something, then tell them what you think you might do next week to help somebody. You have 20 seconds, because 10 I took out. 19, 18, 17, 16, what is that? 15, okay. 14. Our time is just about up. Don't bother about that, I'm just going to throw these over. Okay, just about up. And you've done all of that. Okay, our time is over. Our time is up. You know, bet there were some fantasies and some concoctions that went on out there. But if you haven't done what you said you were going to do, then you have next week to begin to do that. But as Sarah Russell told me that we were going to be talking about tonight, black women facing the 21st century, I said this is very, very important because, see, you start talking centuries, people think that you got a whole century to get to it. We're talking about 3 more birthdays, 3 more raises, or 3 more vacations, whatever it might be, before we enter the 21st century. And let me tell you why I found there's a facing some tough times. See, some people believe that life is like it is on television with the Cosby Family. Some people think that all women go through life just hoping to one day to be a Stedman's love interest and this kind of thing. Most women do not do that. We have difficult times because we recognize there are tough times ahead. And the reason why I said that, you do know that if anybody's going to save the black family, are you now with me convinced that it's going to have to be us? It's just going to have to be us. There are some people who are still saying, oh, the government will save us. Well, the government is part of the problem. How are they going to actually save us from anything? And if you're part of the problem, you certainly can be a part of a solution. The government has already said that 1 out of 4 black babies that are not even born, not to mention those that are born, will end up in jail. Now, how is a government that makes those type predictions going to help us? You know the Democrats cannot help us, but I know 95% of you probably think the Democrats will help us, but I know that 100% of you know the Republicans will not help us. And some of you who have gotten a little bit angry with the brothers and forgotten who your sisters are, and forgotten to look in the mirror, you may even think that white feminists like Gloria Allred, Denise Brown, and Madeleine Albright will help us. But you know those women are not going to help us even if they could. Did they help us when their husbands raped us on the plantations? Did they help us when their husbands brought domestic violence against us on the plantations? See, this is what a lot of people do not look at. Those women are out for themselves, and we'll get into them also a little bit later. So only the black man and only the black woman are the ones who will save black people, and we should stop depending upon anyone else. Let me show you some of the things we're facing. White folks were surprised to see the racial polarization that took place after that first O.J. Simpson jury came in. They were just like, they had no idea that we could even feel. They did not know, first of all, we believed that the prosecution, Marsha Clark, with a polyester wearing self, did not prove the case. We understood that from the very, very beginning. But then we also understood that this was much bigger to us than O.J. Simpson. We know O.J. Simpson is hopeless and helpless. And so we had no intentions of even dealing with someone like that. We were seeing our fathers, our brothers, and everybody else that we knew. And so they were surprised to see that it was at an all-time high. They are surprised to see that black folks are not surprised that affirmative action is being taken away. Because don't they take away everything else? First of all, affirmative action started to have reparations for those who had been left out. And reparations meant black folks. Because the Japanese got their reparations and they were in the concentration camps for 4 years. And we were in there 400 and didn't get ours. Germany gave reparations to the Jews, and you can go all the way down the line. But when it came time for our reparations, affirmative action, the reason why you don't hear white females saying anything, because 80% of the jobs on affirmative action went to them, plus pushing us to the back burner and bringing inflation up. This is the kind of thing that happened, the reason why we're not surprised at anything they do. We're facing turbulent times because as we speak tonight, they're in the process of changing the jury system. They are determined that there will never be a predominantly black jury that will free anybody accused of murdering white folks, even if they are trash. It does not matter to them. This is what they're not going to have happen. So now they're making plans that they only need 2 or 3 to either hang a jury or 2 or 3 to let the person walk. That's all because of us. It's not because of other people. Because see, nothing makes me angrier when we talk about our civil rights and what we've missed. That here comes the Asians in to join us. Here come the Latinos in talking about their civil rights. Here comes white women in talking about theirs. The Mexicans, all of these people. And I don't know, some of you are very, very young, but in my experience growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I never knew that anybody who was sent to the back of the bus because she was a white woman. Nobody was sent to the back of the bus because they were homosexual. Nobody was sent to the back of the bus because they were Asian and Latin. They were sent to the back of the bus because their faces were black. And now all of these groups are wanting to come in now and take the things that owe us. And some of our leaders stand up there and say, oh, we're all one. We should include everyone that's going in. Every time I hear them do that, I just want to pick up a sock, a shoe, or something and throw it at the television. See, this is why I'm not mistaken by these leaders. See, anytime, first of all, you can't lead me when you call an organization rainbow because there's no black in a rainbow, as you all always know. And then they were amazed to know that we were shocked. We were shocked to know that white folks were surprised to know when the San Jose Mercury News broke the story of the CIA and putting drugs in our community. It didn't surprise us. I don't know why white folks knew that we didn't have any airplanes and boats and all those things to come in here. But the only thing that just disturbed me about it was I was sorry that a black newspaper could not once in a while broken a story like that. They're surprised to know that we're sick of public school education and that we equate public schools with prisons because they're both running the business of incarcerating our children to keep them off the streets until they're old enough to be sent to some other place. Pediatricians have now said, and speaking of black children, that gun violence is now the epidemic of the 90s. And this is why I'm saying, sisters, there are some things that we've got cut out for us because you cannot depend upon the coalitions or your co-workers or your friends unless your co-workers' faces are black and they have been politicized just as you have. The Center for Disease Control have told us that most black children are going to get killed in school or even near the school. And yet when we decide that we want to have our own private schools, the white liberals will come crawling out from under the woodwork telling us that we're separating ourselves in this kind of segregation. You remember in Detroit when they wanted to have a school for all black boys? And here come all of these folks out of here, the types that you know are not our friends, the Gloria Steinems and all, coming out talking about it was discriminating against our girls. And see, when that didn't work, they said that then we'll find a black person. Have you noticed white folks can always find a black person to come and do their biddings against us? Can always find one. And they made a mistake to find a sister to come out against Julia Hare on CNN. And I told the sister during the break, I said, now you have your opportunity to either side with me or go home embarrassed to death. You have your choice to do whichever one you want to do. I said, because if you side with the white folks today, I'm going to treat you just like them. I said, because this is what has happened on the slave plantations. Whenever we had any meetings and there was an insurrection there, it was usually a black person who told them because white folks were not at the planning meeting. And I said, they're going to do the same thing to you as they did to the others. Once they pushed us into the river, whatever it was for trying to get away, they kicked the person in there who went back to tell them. So I said, you got your choice, and we're going to give you a countdown to 3. Sister got on there just singing right along with me, and knowing she didn't agree with me, but I told her, but you had your choice to either face me here or go home and face your community, either one that you chose to choose. You have to do that to them. I say this, we're going to really have to start holding black people accountable, and somehow we're afraid to do that. We put them in office, we're afraid to hold them accountable, because what they do, then they run for office, they come to groups like this, they go to all the black churches and they speak, and they have us out there selling fish dinners and chicken dinners and doing the chitlin strut and everything we can to raise money to get them in. And once they get in the office, they say, oh, I'm not an officer, I'm not the mayor of black people, I'm the mayor of all people. And see, I have a problem with that, because first of all, a serious revolutionary will not and does not even wish to become an elected official. I'm telling you about a serious revolutionary. Because you cannot do that, because you have to serve 2 masters, and I think we've all taught you cannot serve 2 masters at one time. Because once you get into office, if you are not serving the folks who have bankrolled you, you're either going to be recalled, assassinated, or put out. Now, I'm not telling you not to vote for black folks, and I think that you should do that. Anytime a black person is running for office, vote for them, but don't expect for them to be your leader if you want to get liberation and go to freedom. You will always work with them, but your leaders cannot be elected officials, just like the white folks' leaders are not elected officials. You really don't think that Bill Clinton is running anything, do you? That's just the elected official. You really don't think those cabinet members are running their communities. They are elected officials. The business people and the scholars and the people like us who do all the thinking out here, that's who's running them and calling the shots. In other words, when we have elected officials, they are the puppets who should be out there dancing, but we are the puppeteers who should be pulling those strings, telling them what to say. And if they don't say those things, if you don't dance to those strings, then we got to pull the strings and pull you off the stage. People were also very surprised that we were not shocked that Texaco came out and made that statement about the jelly beans. The only thing that we were shocked at is that somebody reported them. Because we know this type stuff goes